Welcome to You Make the Difference. I'm Wanda Walker, and today I'm talking to Harriet Langford with the Ray C. Anderson Foundation. Ray was from West Point, and he started Interface here in LaGrange. Welcome to the show, Harriet.
Thank you.
Yes, and Ray was your daddy, right?
Yes, he was.
Tell me about his life and some of the things he accomplished.
He was born and raised in West Point, Georgia, and he was quite an athlete.
Yes.
And he played high school football, and really his only ticket for college would be to get a scholarship. And he got a scholarship to Georgia Tech and played with Bobby Dodd. And his first year was good, but he had a shoulder injury at the end. So it really retired him from football, but Coach Bobby Dodd really saw Ray's intellectual value, and he kept him at Georgia Tech and let him finish, graduated in 1956 in industrial engineering.
Yes, and then he had quite a career, didn't he?
He did.
Tell me about his career.
He did. His first job was with Procter & Gamble, and then he moved to work with Milliken. And in the early 70s, he was sent to Europe to look at a new product, which was modular carpet tiles. And the United States had never seen that before. He really thought this was like one of the best products he'd ever seen. It was really good timing because high-rise buildings were beginning to show in the early 70s, and all the electrical work was in the flooring. So the carpet tiles made perfect sense to him, how easy it is to fix wiring in the floor with just modular carpet tiles. So in 1973, he brought the product to Georgia and opened Interface and started selling carpet tiles.
And how big has Interface grown?
Oh, it's global now. It's really big. It's in 5 countries. He took it from just a local business to a huge global industry.
And that's amazing. I love it when people from Troup County are able to do something that affects the world.
Absolutely.
Yes. Now tell me, eventually, Ray saw that there was a need for a cleaner environment.
Yes.
That the carpet industry was contributing to pollution in the environment.
Yes.
And so he wanted to do something about that. Tell me what he did.
Well, what happened was just the manufacturing of carpet tile was very dirty, 80% petroleum backing. And he didn't realize the damage he was doing. He went to the West Coast to speak, and an audience, someone in the audience asked him, "So what are you doing for the environment?" And he said, "Well, I comply by all the rules and regulations." He didn't really understand. He was later given a book by Paul Hawken, The Ecology of Commerce. And that book, he read every word. And he said it felt like a spear to his chest.
Oh.
He said, I'm convicted. I am an industrial plunderer, and I've got to change my ways. We always said we thought it was the Holy Spirit that was nudging him to change his ways.
Wow.
He was very convicted of the heart, and that was his platform. And for 20 years, he really pushed, we're going to change how Interface is manufacturing. And what he learned, and this was the whole beginning of recycling in the industrial world, was you can take and make in waste, but what if you take it, make it, reclaim it, and reuse it? So it literally cut out the petroleum that was such the problem and the manufacturing of it. So now really Interface has carpet tiles in storage units that can be taken and separated apart and reused. So he really closed the loop.
Yes. And what did he call that project?
I don't know what he called that project.
Okay.
I think his intentions were to be zero emissions.
Zero, yes.
Net zero. And they're working on the goal to be there by 2020. So he ended up passing away before he got to see the final product of how he really could close the loop. But Interface is very engaged, staying on track, wanting to accomplish the goal of 2020 to have zero impact on the earth.
That's great.
Yeah.
And you know, you're carrying on his legacy.
Yes.
And recently, part of I-85 was named for Ray.
Right.
The Ray C. Anderson Memorial Highway.
Right.
And it was exit 2 to exit 18.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how that was selected.
Well, when he passed, I think Interface really felt a tug at their heart. How can we honor him? And some of the employees said, let's name a street for him in the industrial park. And I said, I think we ought to do bigger than that. Why don't we name the highway? And we used legislature to help us get this secured. Representative Randy Nix last summer had the bill passed so that we can name the highway for Ray. And the importance of that is exit 2 was where West Point is, and being born and raised there.
Yes.
He really was special to the community, and he wanted to give back to the community. So one of the Interface plants was built in West Point. The original plant was built at in LaGrange at exit 18. So that was how we came to the 16 miles, and we call it the Green 16.
Yes.
We're looking at really what Ray did, the framework that he used for Interface. And we knew he wouldn't be very excited to be named for a dirty highway. We really thought it would be better to think the way Ray thought and how
Yes.
Interface thought. So I said, let's make it better. Let's look at it as restorative and sustainable. But we didn't know how we were going to do that.
And so you eventually started Mission Zero,
Yes.
a corridor,
Yes.
and I guess, was that your brainchild?
I actually thought of it and said, you know, I don't really know what a sustainable or restorative highway would look like, but I just didn't feel right naming him for a highway that didn't value what he valued. So we were not knowledgeable about how to do this, but he was a Georgia Tech graduate, and we always, thought Georgia Tech was just really ahead of the curve.
Yes.
And we went to Georgia Tech College of Architecture and said, we've got a challenge. We want to figure out how to make this highway different. And they were like, nobody's ever studied this. And I said, I know. It's
Yes.
something totally new. So it was really, nobody knew what we were going to do. But Georgia Tech really put a great baseline study for us. Georgia Conservancy also played a large part in this. Georgia Conservancy, with their reputation, they also have what's called the Blueprints program for communities. They've studied lots of cities and how do you make the cities more sustainable. So we thought, okay, well, if you can study a city, can you study a road?
Yes.
And these students did an unbelievable job. So we're very excited. We have an executive summary that really is our baseline. It's moved to something much bigger than that. We knew we weren't smart enough, but we knew there are people out there in the world that knew things that we didn't know. So one of the greatest things I think we've done is partner with technology company called Innovia Technology from Cambridge, England. And what's really good about them is they're going to study the world and what technologies are there
Yes.
and available and bring them right to our 16-mile stretch of highway.
That is amazing, isn't it? I know it has to be thrilling to
It's
you.
very exciting.
Yeah, to have an idea and then see it come to fruition, or it's coming to fruition, but
Right.
even to see the beginning steps and how big it is, it's really amazing, isn't it?
Yes, it's a lot bigger than we thought. In the beginning, we thought, well, maybe a little solar down the highway. Let's look at milkweed for butterflies and migration for animals, things like that. But what we're finding is there really is some technology that can fix a lot of the problems that we have on this highway.
Let's talk about what'll be on the highway. And one thing, I heard you speak at a meeting, and one thing that I just really loved was about studying about the roads and how there's been no improvements and how roads have been laid for, was it how many years since they've been laying them, I guess,
Well,
right?
It's really been an infrastructure that was laid 6 decades ago.
Yes.
And nobody's ever looked at it again.
And tell me about how you were thinking about how the road doesn't give back, but now you're going to have things in there where the road actually gives back.
Right.
Now tell me about that.
Okay, well, what we really wanted to target was air quality, water quality, and land. So if you take a highway and you look at the way it's designed, what we wanted to accomplish was proper stormwater management.
Yes.
Nobody's ever thought about the impact of climate change. And what if this particular area gets more rain than it's used to? We average around 50 inches a year, but one day our highway could be underwater.
Mm-hmm.
So we're really studying how we're going to manage this water. And if you look at air quality, we know that there's a lot of CO2 that is emitted from all of our vehicles. And until vehicles change, which they're starting to,
Mm-hmm.
you'll see a lot more electric vehicles on the roads. But until then, until we're completely that way, we really wanted to sequester this carbon. I mean, this is where you look at asthma
Mm-hmm.
affecting people's health, bad air quality. So there are technologies that can actually help clean the air. We have found at Arizona State University what they call carbon mop scrubbers, which actually sequester
Yes.
the air, filter it, take the CO2, store it, and then you can repurpose CO2. We found that there's a company called Blue Planet that is working on sequestering CO2 from industries, from the flute stack. So you actually could cap off a flute stack, sequester the CO2, and it can be turned into a repurposed aggregate. So then you think about, how do we use aggregate for our roads? Well, it's in every road system. You can mix it with concrete. It's the base of a highway, of any road, and then it can also be mixed with asphalt. So what we are learning is there's ways to take the CO2 out of the air but reuse it in a much cleaner way.
Yes.
So you're reducing mining for your stone that goes into highways, and you're looking at replacing that with what was a bad product is now turned into something that's more positive.
Yes. Now, I remember about the highways. As the cars drove over the highways, they would produce electricity.
Yes, they can.
Okay, now tell us about that.
All right, this is very new.
Yes.
This is a technique that is dealing with kinetic energy, which is the friction on a surface. There's actually a material now that can be embedded in the roadway with sensors, and these sensors and this mesh system with cars riding over it can create energy that could be fed into the grid,
Yes.
or stored into batteries. So nobody has ever thought, wow, a road could actually produce energy, but it can. There would be enough that could be produced to put lighting all the way down the interstate, and that energy from the cars and trucks could keep the lights going.
That is amazing. That is amazing. Okay, what features? Well, let's see. How do you see that this highway is going to affect Troup County?
Oh, I see great value. What's really nice about this 16-mile corridor is we have an industrial park.
Yes.
And we've got some great corporate partners that are very excited about the opportunity for West Georgia. We hope it's kind of a magnet that will attract some other sustainable manufacturing businesses on this corridor. We see a lot of value there. There may be some startup businesses that come that know what we're doing but want to be a part of it, or they may have something they want to add to it. So we're really excited about West Georgia's opportunity to put them on the map.
Yes.
For being completely different in looking at a highway and a whole community. What highways do is really separate ecosystems, and we have probably 6 endangered species along our corridor. So you look at not just industry and how it affects everything, but looking at how this road has affected ecosystems. So as crazy as this sounds, there's talk about wanting to really do a migration bridge for animals. We have a lot of deer.
Yes,
So you've got
we do.
industry and you've got animals.
Yes.
And this highway is really what dissects everything. And the community. I mean, it separates
Yes.
the community. So what's so good about this is that if you're looking at your ecosystem, how do we put them back together? And there's actually a bear migration bridge being built in Georgia. So we're looking at building a bridge across our corridor. We have a lot of deer.
Yes.
And there's also a lot of deer strikes and their deaths.
Yes.
This happens, it kills people and it kills animals. So what if you gave them that opportunity at the right spot where there's conservation land on both sides that they can actually cross safely?
I think that's great. I worked with John Darden at District 4, and he said, he thought that deer were just out to commit suicide. I mean, they just run right out in front of the car.
Right.
But yes, there are so many accidents with deer. If we could eliminate that, that would be wonderful.
Yes. That particular area, 16 miles, there's usually an average of one death a year.
Oh, wow.
And you take all 50,000 miles of interstate across the United States, that really adds up to a lot of people.
Yes,
and you
it
look at
does.
it globally. So why couldn't this be a framework that shows the world how
Yes.
we can protect animals and lives? So really, life safety is one of our number one goals, and it can come in a lot of ways. The road can actually communicate now.
Tell me about that.
Okay, so if you are riding down the road and say there was a deer a quarter of a mile ahead, that road could relate to a car through sensors, and we call it the iCloud.
Yes.
But it communicates to the car, and there's a flash of there's an animal ahead.
Yes.
Caution. So
Wow.
the road actually can talk to you as you're driving. It can warn you. It can change if you need to shift to just one particular lane. The lights can change on the highway with the sensors. So it's really taking what cars do today with each other. They communicate. We're actually looking at the road communicating to the cars now.
That is awesome. Yeah, with the technology that we have now, houses communicate with the people that are in them, and
Right.
so I mean, it's just up and coming things, isn't it?
It makes perfect sense.
It does. Okay, and I know that you're thinking that because of what we're doing here in Troup County in that area, that it will improve tourism. Tell me
yeah.
about that.
Well, some people have described this particular project. Is it going to be like Epcot? What is it going to look like? Well, that's going to make quite an impact, I think. We're looking really at why not use the most sustainable landscaping, but make it beautiful.
Yes.
Make it inviting. Looking at bookending from 2 to 18 where you're in a different place. And then random technologies, people are like, what was that?
Yes.
These carbon mop scrubbers are pretty big. So I think if you compare it to a billboard, they're around that size. But what if there were billboards that were cleaning the air?
Yes.
What if you used all of your billboards to message sustainability through the corridor? So I think it will look very different. I think it'll be inviting. And one day it may be a total different material that's on the road. We've even located plastic highways, believe it or not, taking plastics and turning them into highways. So I think it will look different. I think it'll be beautiful. I think it'll be inviting. We want it to really stand out.
And we're also thinking that other places will want to know about this highway
Right.
and how it's done. It may change the way highways are built throughout the world.
That's our goal.
That's your goal,
We're addressing really something, like I said, an infrastructure that hasn't even been looked at in 60 years.
Yes.
But what if everybody saw what we did and they said, let's go do it where we live? And that's really what's so good about this project. Could go anywhere, any highway in the world. And I think just demonstrating that we can clean the air and we can create a story.
Yes.
And it's inviting, it's exciting, it's educational. I think it could be very impactful.
Now, Kia's been involved with the project too, right? Tell me what their role has been.
Well, they actually are probably our biggest industry on our corridor. And Kia was one of our very first partners. They saw a lot of value, and they're in the car business.
Yes.
So of course, they're working on cars that we don't know what they're really doing, but they do have a new EV sold. So that was nice that we got an electric vehicle that Kia has manufactured. And the first infrastructure that's come to our highway is at the Welcome Center, which is a PV for EV, which is photovoltaic for electric vehicles. And it's a charger, is what's called a fast charge. So you've got a solar array that is giving the energy to charge cars, and they can charge in less than 30 minutes. So you can visit the Welcome Center and get your car charged. It's filling a void from Atlanta to Montgomery on our highway, so it's a convenient stop.
Yes.
There's actually apps now that can tell you where EV chargers are. It's called Green Lots. So that will be on an app for anybody that wants to know where to charge their car. And we do know that I think Auburn does have an EV charger, but it's not on a highway. So we thought it was really good that Montgomery to Atlanta actually had a great place to just stop right off the highway and charge.
Yes, so how many electric cars are on the highway, or how many would we expect to come through?
Maybe at this point, I'd say 10% of the vehicles are EVs.
Okay.
But I do see that this is going to continue to grow very large.
Right. So we're prepared.
We're preparing ahead of time.
We're proactive.
Ahead of time. That's
Yeah,
right.
that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. How will the Welcoming Center, the West Point Welcoming Center, change as a result of what we're doing?
Actually, it's due for a, quote, facelift. So we're going to work with trying to really get this Welcome Center off the grid. It'd be great to have solar for demonstration that will really help with their power bill, and some of these technologies that we want to test can actually start there. We've talked with the Georgia Department of Transportation, who has endorsed us 100%. But even just the thought of what if the entrance or exit to the Welcome Center was demonstrating the kinetic energy. And in all of this, there could be a third lane to this whole highway that was actually an EV charging lane. But we got to start somewhere. So we wanted to really use the Welcome Center as a testing zone so that different technologies, wind, sun, kinetic, that all can be a part of the Welcome Center, and also a great opportunity for us to highlight our corporate industries along the 16 miles. We've got Interface, Kimberly-Clark, Coke, Walmart, Kia, Caterpillar. So we've got a large group of industries there. So we're looking at highlighting them and what they're doing for the environment, and each one of them is doing something.
Yes.
So it'd be a great opportunity to have kiosks that actually tell the story and what industries are on the corridor and what they're doing, and also explain a lot of the technologies that they may see along the corridor.
Now, you mentioned wind. Tell me what you're doing with wind.
Well, if you look at a normal wind turbine, it runs like this.
Uh-huh.
Well, there's actually wind turbines that can go across the highway that spin like this. And as cars go through and trucks go through, it's creating that wind tunnel so it can actually create the energy.
Harriet, you're amazing me. I mean,
We found lots of really
you have
good
learned
things.
a lot, right?
Yes, I have. This has been an educational process for me, but we call them little nuggets that we locate.
Yes.
And what I love about it is Innovia Technologies is actually saying we're going to find out what really works and what doesn't work. So there's room for improvement, but there's also, okay, we just won't make a horrible mistake. But if we do, we'll learn from it. So some technologies may not work as well as we thought, but every technology is evolving.
Yes, and I want to just touch on the interface employees. I know recently you did something on the highway, and the the interface employees came and were participating in that. Tell me about what you did at first and how the employees responded to it.
Well, I go back to the beginning. The employees really wanted to name some road for Ray.
Yes.
And I was like, no, let's do bigger in the highway. So they were very excited about that. And they're always very committed to community work, and they provide lots of hours.
Yes.
And they saw value of, let's go and let's help them and look at some of the interchanges and what needs to be done. And that was really remulching. So we had lots of interface employees out there on the side of the highway helping us at our interchange at exit 18. So that was a big service project. They're very excited and supportive, and they know the value here, and it makes Interface look great.
It does. And people even flew in from other areas to help, didn't they?
They actually were hosting their annual sales meeting.
Yes.
So we had a lot of people from all over.
Yes.
And they were very excited just to be a part and do this service project. So we're very grateful for Interface.
Yes. Okay, and let's see. Is there an opportunity for the community to get involved in what you're doing?
Oh, I think so, for sure. We want the community to feel a part of this. If it's Adopt a Mile, let's keep it as clean and pristine as we can. If it's plant some wildflowers, I mean, there's lots of opportunities for the community to be involved. I think about garden clubs and a lot of what they do that really could be done right there on our highway.
Yes.
Make it beautiful.
Yes. Well, I just want to thank you for being a guest on You Make the Difference, and thank you for having such a great idea and being willing to act on that idea and bring it to fruition. And that's what we're hoping that a lot of people in our community will do, that when you have those great ideas, that you will pursue them, because those great ideas and people like you truly make a difference. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.
Got a promise from heaven. It's a year of replevin.